Hello, hello, blissful parenting. Michelle Abraham, your host here today. Let me share with you my amazing guest, Donovan Dreyer, today. Donovan, I want to say hi to you first before we share a little bit more all about you. How are you doing?
Great. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so excited. I appreciate the offer to talk to your audience.
Yeah, well, I'm so excited to have you here today. And what Donovan and I were discussing before we jumped on here is that we really want to talk about, social media and like how it can be really great for kids and really like enhance their future and like how to like work it properly. Now, social media is a scary word for a lot of us parents of younger kids that are still in elementary school. We're like this, it's this thing that we're like, oh God, it's coming, it's coming. I don't know what to do with it. And so Donovan specializes in, really helping parents with that, and also like there's a lot of things that you help parents with. We'll get into more of that in a second. Let me tell our parents a little bit more about you, Donovan, and then we'll get into that. So you started your career with the focus of a dream of becoming a pilot, which is really cool. And then you did lots of training and degrees and discovered that your real passion was not flying a plane, but helping parents of teens navigate their bumpy airways of life, which is so cool. I think that's a really neat way of putting it. So since making that shift, you've coached hundreds of teens and to find their right path and discover their inner confidence to get on track with a vision of their future. So in today's world, the overwhelm of anxiety and stress of the future and pressures of being competitive, you've been able to really help them use their gifts and or figure out what their gifts are. I'm sure that's the first part, is figuring out what their gifts are and using their gifts to then help them have a more calm and clear pathway in their new life. And especially like leaving the nest as kids and taking flight, which is like, I think, kind of cool. So Donovan, you've got so many great experiences, and that's you're a counselor from schools, counseling, Colorado State and Wyoming School of Counseling and community colleges. And then your mission I wanted to share with our parents is that to help 1 million teens navigate this new world. And it is a new world we're living in. So please share with us, like, where is this passion for helping teens navigate this new world come from?
Well, my cat's chiming in. You're stealing the show. Sorry about that. So it's in 1993. I'm sitting in Zingerman's Deli in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I'm with a pilot, and I just finished my program. First tip: if you're going to do informational interviewing, which is interviewing somebody in a career you're interested in, do that before your education's all done.
Oh gosh,
no. So anyway, I did it afterwards, and the guy was just crazy about flying. And a lot of times that's the thing that really gets us excited about something, right? And we're like, yeah. But for me, it was like, I bet I got what he's feeling for something, but I don't feel quite that way about flying. And that set me on a quest to do that soul searching in my 20s and just say no go to flying. Instant career change. And I'm a super decisive person, apparently. But yeah, I stuck with it. I was loyal to it, got all the way through it. And then I decided, I want to find what I'm excited about, like that dude. And so, if we fast forward a bit into the late 90s, I did like a few years working for my dad's family business. And then the Columbine shooting happened. And I just thought, well, I want to get in the trenches. It wasn't like frontliner was not a thing. We didn't have that name back then, but that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to get on the front lines of the high schools and get in with the kids and figure out why something crazy like that would happen and stop it, and make sure that didn't become a trend. And that did not work out. It became a trend. But what I did do is I discovered why kids actually want to harm somebody else and why kids want to harm themselves, and made a breakthrough tool for that. So I got a traffic light system for being able to understand the inner world. It's really, really, really easy. I've taught it to elementary school kids. Fast forward a little bit further, I got a chance to start doing some coaching with grownups in the business world. And that helped me realize, they're looking for meaning and purpose and lifestyle, all these other things in addition to career. So just getting the career is not the right answer. So that brought me all the way back to, well, how can we proactively really set up a meaningful, fulfilling future? And that's really what my coaching is totally specializing in, is let's get the present figured out, deal with the stresses with my traffic light system. Let's get the future figured out as much as we can. We can't figure it all out because there's, new careers and new things happening. that are pretty crazy in the news or great in the world all the time. So, but we can do is to actually put a lot of effort into pouring into their preparation for their real world. So they actually do craft both the career and lifestyle they really desire and love. And then I also help kids present themselves properly, even before they've got a LinkedIn. So that's kind of the whole journey for me. And the mission is really like, I believe Generation Z should be the greatest generation of all time. We shouldn't have like the greatest generation be back from the 1940s. We should get better and better and better and better. And every generation should be the greatest, but we've got to pour in and help them out with that. And so that's what's called me to really zero in on having a specialty within coaching and move beyond the schools where, I just had to deal with a lot of crisis situations with mental health. And I definitely learned a lot though of why people are unhappy and what makes them super fulfilled and happy.
Interesting. Yeah, it seems to be, especially in the last 2 years, it's uncovered so many adults like really, really questioning what their purpose is, and then is their cup full, and is this really what they want to be doing? So yeah, it's interesting. It would be interesting. I would love to like see the stats on like kids that have worked with you like early on versus like the adults that the different versus the kids that didn't, and then those same like group of 20 like 20 years later, what this like how fulfilled the ones that have worked with you are, because you can get all that right in the beginning, like, oh my gosh, yeah, like so much pain and heartache would be saved.
Yeah, tons of people get coaching in the adult world, but it's a new thing to actually start early. And so many people are like 50 something and at midlife, or they're at the great resignation, but they're not done. And that's where it's like, oh, let me put two and two together. So many people want that at 40, 50, 60. I worked with an 85-year-old still looking to do the next thing in life, right, within the business coaching. And it's like, let's go all the way back. And anybody that's like, oh, I wish I could have had a coach when I was a kid. Well, you can't, but your kids can. So they can totally get started early with that kind of support.
Yeah, and one of the things I think is like I feel like dodged a bullet, like being a little bit, into like my 40s now, is like social media wasn't a big thing like when I was in my teens or in elementary school. It wasn't something that I had until college. And I feel like, thank God, because I can't imagine the stress that would cause, having social media like always there. So for our poor kids and teens that are like experiencing this like so young, it's kind of looked at like this evil thing. But I think with your expertise, you've kind of figured out a way to make this actually a really great tool that they can use that will help them in the future. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, we're all making a pre-impression these days. Forget about a first impression. Before we make our first impression, we make a pre-impression. Mm-hmm. And that's because people can just get on their phones and look us up and say, well, what's their Instagram look like? What's their Facebook like? Why don't they have anybody on LinkedIn? Why aren't they on LinkedIn? So we are all out there making a pre-impression before anybody gets to know us, because they can ghost us and check us out and all that stuff. So for kids, they're interested. Hey, can I get a TikTok? I'm like 5 years old. Let me get a TikTok. And so there is definitely too early, and there's definitely an impact. I've got 3 daughters. They're all teenagers right now myself. So it's one thing to help everybody else's teenagers through the years. But as a dad, I now have 3 of my own.
You're like right in the trenches with this all.
Oh, yeah. So I'm definitely not as objective and neutral with the 3 of them. But I definitely noticed my youngest one, she's the one that started with the tech and the screens and stuff like that earlier. The pandemic came along when she's younger. And I think for me, the pandemic made me slide with the rules a little bit. And so it was really hard to be like stuck in the house all the time and not have anything to do and say, hey, kids, get off your phone. Because like they needed a little bit of like connection with their friends. So there's like that element, which is really
games,
good with the phones.
Like my son was playing games with his friends. That's the only way they were able to see each other for 2 years, basically.
Yeah. So there's definitely some good elements. And then you cross a line. So I think the thing that really, as I see like 20 years worth of school counseling at the high school level and the elementary school level, nearly 100% of the time, any of the big issues, you could trace it right back to the home environment. And any of the people that had it like together, you could trace it right back to the home environment. So I think the buffer for kids is a parent who cares and is asking questions and is concerned. And if you start to notice stuff like with my youngest, there's stuff that's from TikTok, there's stuff that's from the internet. And I'm like, that's not what the older ones were doing at your age. So I definitely know personally on the third daughter, that's where we slipped a little bit. The pandemic happened. And, so there's an impact. There's definitely an impact that shapes their personality, or at least shapes their viewpoints and perspectives at the very least. So when those things come up, you can talk about it. Where did that come from? Where'd you come up with that? We don't talk about that at our house. Where'd that come from? And so I think the cool thing, though, is it is this tool that allows friends to play with each other, to communicate with each other. I've got clients now from a third country besides the US. So the walls just went away. And the walls have been gone for a long time. So now we all get this opportunity to think about, well, how do we use this wisely? How do we use this in a good way? And for kids, some of that interplay of just dealing with the things that they might come up with that you're like, that's a little bit wonky. Let's address it. Go ahead and address it. And then say, okay, let's set some new limits, or boom, you're too young for that app. That one's got to go. You've totally demonstrated you're not ready for it. And so you might need to kick out the TikTok if it's too young for that one. So just know, I think, first of all, that the buffer is what you do every single day. Their perspectives, their values, their character, their personality, all that's being developed mostly by your presence, just by you being aware, having those conversations. This is a tool that exists. We can't just pretend it doesn't exist. And there's some amazing good uses out of it. So we've got to actually introduce them to the ways it can be used for good. And I think we've totally underutilized and totally underthought about the amazing good things that can come out of our ability to be connected like we are, and to use all the apps and tools that are on the phone that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I'd love to see it in a little bit better light than the ugly addiction that it's been put into, because yes, it's caused us some harm, I'm sure, with kids, but I think there's a lot of good that can happen from it too, as long as it's, like you said, in proportion to their age and ability and level, like that. But share with us a little bit about what your thoughts are around using the social media, to have a presence there that's going to help them later on, getting jobs and using the social media for good, versus for the parties on the weekend.
For sure. Yeah. I think I've used my oldest daughter a couple of times as an example, and she has all A's and B's her whole career for school. But she's like me. She's like a outside the box thinker, and she's not going to do college. And what she's been doing, though, is posting on her Looks by Lily D Instagram, and she's also got, I think, TikTok. Those are the main two. You can see this whole progression of her makeup. So she is one of those teen makeup artists, but I mean, she really loves it. I mean, she's got full face. Like at Valentine's Day, there's 12 hearts all over her face, and her face was totally covered. So she's experimenting and she's posting and she's consistent. Like I told her, do what you want to do, but if you're going to build this platform here, one of the things I see adults don't do very well, if you want to make this into something you're really gearing up for your future, is work on your consistency. And she's great about it, way better than I am. She's consistent. And so she posts regularly, and you can see this whole progression over the course of a few years of her very first one to her second, fifth, 20th, 100th. And, some of her views have gotten into the 5-figure level, like 50,000 views on some of her posts. And that doesn't happen, out of the blue if you just decide to do that way in the future, just like that. Plus, you can't see that whole progression. And there's another one called ZeeMee. So it's ZEE.MEE.com. And ZeeMee is really designed to be like academic media. So if you really want to do something besides her makeup look in that journey, like my daughters are all artists. So some of them have won contests for their art, like 3 or 4 times on the bullying prevention calendar. They've got the cover. So they could post that on ZeeMee, just a picture of the cover, and write a little caption on ZeeMee. And then they win again and post in a caption, and then they win again. And then maybe a community service project. Get a picture of that. You can put that on ZeeMee and type up a little caption. Building a portfolio
then for the kids, right?
Totally. That's what ZeeMee is. Yeah.
Cool.
And then that's something you can share that link with colleges. And if scholarship competitions allow it, you can share that link. So it's like academic / pre-college media, or like,
Hmm.
I think LinkedIn actually tried LinkedIn Junior. So it's basically like a LinkedIn
Yeah,
Junior.
yeah. That's LinkedIn in here. That's awesome. Yeah, that's so great. I mean, I think there's some great benefits to using it. And it's so cool for kids to be able to like start building something so early so that when they do get to college and there's so many kids like they're building things and they're so smart like when it comes to like Minecraft or Roblox and they're doing all these things there. Like it's great to have somewhere to showcase that and be proud of it and like instead of hanging up all of our trophies on the walls now we can have them online so that colleges can see. That's really great. Love it. Now you mentioned your traffic system for emotional intelligence, emotional health and well-being for kids, and share a little bit about what that looks like right now for post-pandemic. There's been a lot of stress going on, a lot of anxiety, a lot more like mental health issues in our kids. Is there something that you can share about with your traffic system that might be able to help our parents navigate these times right now?
Yeah, I mean, before I actually turned it into a document, I was doing like a scale of 1 to 10. How bad is your stress? You really like trigger alert for anybody listening. But what led to what was the genesis and the origin of this program or this innovation of mine is that we had 3 suicides in a 2 week span. And I was actually the only counselor left in town because it happened right at Thanksgiving break.
Mm.
And one of the moms, a week later or 2 weeks later, something like that, she said, "Isn't there a way to have an early warning of something like this?" And there was a company that came in, "Hey, if you're feeling like you're, going to be self-harming or suicidal, turn in this card." And she's like, "That's too late. Isn't there like an early detection system?" I'm thinking mindfulness and self-awareness, and
Mhm.
that's the most nebulous thing in the world. Like, how are we supposed to have an early warning detection system? But I started with a scale of 1 to 10, and that didn't work. It was
Mhm.
totally up to interpretation. Some kids want to come to the school counseling office at the littlest tiny
Mhm.
0.5 on a scale of 1 to 10. And other kids are like, "No, I'm never going to come in there in a million years. It's got to be 9.9
Mhm.
out of 10. I was like, well, that doesn't work. And then I thought of a traffic light, and a traffic light wouldn't work if we had one light, which was white with a black font of numbers on it. And everybody's like, "I'm just going whatever number I feel like. I like to go, so I'm going on a 1 or a 5 or whatever." Like, no, that wouldn't work. We got to have a system where if you're going perpendicular to me and
Mhm.
I'm going perpendicular to you, you want to know to go if it's green, and I need to go, know to stop if it's red. And we need to trust each other on that one and be on the same page. And all across the country, you get the exact same system. So I combine mental health with a traffic light. Then I also put like kind of a timeline on it too. So I
Mhm.
combine the stock market charting in there too to get patterns that you can see
Mhm.
visually. And I
Mhm.
actually made it with that timeline. You can see the visual patterns. The stress is either rising into the danger zone,
Yeah.
the stress is like going sideways and it's not changing, or the stress is getting relieved and it's coming down. So I would literally get my whiteboard out and put red at the top, yellow in the middle, and green on the bottom, and just
Mhm.
say, "Where are you at?" And they'd be like, "Well, what's that mean? I don't know what any of these mean." And I was like, "Well, this is not like that number system I was using last week when I started doing this." I was like,
Yeah.
"This means green means you can handle it all by yourself, by journaling, listening to your music, playing a video game, whatever. Yellow means you can't. You
Mhm.
don't have the ability to handle it, but it's not that bad. You can go to somebody in your everyday life, a friend that you trust, a family member." And red means you got to get to the school counselor.
Right.
So there's a thing to do for each of the 3 levels. So even though there's 80 billion emojis and there's 80 billion emotions, it really comes down to every person on the planet is either in the green zone, the yellow zone, or the dangerous red zone. And every negative thing that's ever happened in human history, it's because a person or a group is operating from the red zone. So it totally explains everything. So when the pandemic happened, I actually charted like 8 billion of us just went from green up toward the yellow, and we're hovering between yellow and red right now as a whole humanity. So I was actually able to do that on my
That's
Instagram
cool.
right away, like in early
Yeah.
2020, to say this picture is where we're at mental health wise.
Mm.
Yes, there's a pandemic, but everybody just went up into the high yellow in the entire planet all at once, even the counselors and the therapists. Everybody was in a tough spot with their mental health. So that's basically the concept and the idea, and it gives a what not to do as well.
Mm.
Don't
Mhm.
helicopter if your kid's in the green. they're going to be able to work their skills and listen to their music and regulate themselves. But not if you jump in and everything's a problem. You got to stay out of the way. And then the kids would tug on my shirt at recess. They're cheating at Foursquare. And I'd be like, no, this one's yellow. You guys can work this out with your trusted, friends. Well, I don't trust them. All right. It works for conflict resolution anyway. Just go over there, tell them how you feel, tell them what you need, listen to what they feel, and then take a break. And that's your solution. So go over there and try that. I'm not going to jump in and referee that. You got to go work your conflict resolution skills. You got to go work your social skills. So that lower yellow is for them to work it out too. But if we start going toward that red or the high yellow, now it's time for the school counselor or an adult to intervene. And then, even parents can't intervene when it's red zone. It's time for a professional counselor.
Wow. Yeah. And I see how that could be really useful for our younger kids too, with the colors, because they can resonate with the colors.
Yeah, it's easy.
Yeah, it's easy. It's something they understand, even though they don't drive. they still understand.
They do. Yeah, you just got to explain it. Can you handle it by yourself? No, Mr. Dreyer. Well, do I need to jump in? No, I should probably try it with my third grade friend. And then they can just go try it. It didn't work out, Mr. Dreyer. It's worse. What are we going to do? Okay, I can help you out. I can, teach you another skill. Yeah. So, the more skills we learn, the more capable we are in the green. So the green can kind of be open to interpretation, but the end of the green means I can't handle it on my own anymore. And the end of the yellow means I can't handle it on my own. Plus with everyday people, that's not enough. I'm in the emergency level and we need a professional on the scene. So it's so easy to determine what do I do or what do I not do? I shouldn't be helicoptering if they're like, I got this. Yeah. Don't be freaking out. I'm good. So yeah, it just gives us a what to do and a what not to do. So
interesting to have the kids that kind of chart themselves over the course of a few weeks, or even like on a regular basis, just so you can see as a parent, like how was their day. Now, if you were to do that, would you do that like in the morning or in the afternoon or evening, like after the day is already gone?
After the day's over? I actually created a pretty, it could probably be an app, obviously, but what I created is just like Google Slides. And so I put a day of the week, like Sunday through Saturday, and then have a little dot at the bottom of the chart. And they just drag the dot at the end of the day to where the average stress was. And I did with one kid, I did 2 dots. Where was your peak? What was the peak of the day? And then where was the average? And so that was pretty cool because when I first started using that, I had one kid in Australia and one kid here in Windsor, Colorado. And I could literally see inside of both of them. Even when one of them was in the future, the Australian kid was done tomorrow already. I could see what he felt like tomorrow. And then the kid in Windsor, I could literally see once they pulled that dot to the green or the yellow, and none of them were ever in the red. But when they're in the green or in the yellow, I could literally see inside of them, even though they're not even within remote, anywhere remotely around me. Very powerful.
What a great system. I love it. Can our listeners or our parents find out more information about that or how to work with you with that system?
Yeah, you got the download, and it actually took a good 3 years to really integrate it into the schools to make it kind of pervade across the culture of the school. So it is a super simple system. I thought it would be way easier for people to just pick it up and go, but it's really hard because a lot of people do have their own interpretations about what to do around like stress and feelings and emotions. And there's this chart and there's that chart and there's this idea and that idea. There's a bazillion ideas, but we wouldn't want that in the traffic. If we drove the roads and they had pink and purple lights in one state and they had like amber lights and blue lights in another state, we'd be like, how are we supposed to keep safe around here? And they were sideways in some states. So yeah, they could reach out to me. That one's not the giveaway that I provided you, the Dare to Dream one, but they could just email me, Donovan@getreadycoaching.com. And I would love to, explore how I could help either a family group or a community group or a school adopt the system, or at least get like kind of a little preview. Happy to do it.
For sure. And Donovan's provided us a Dare to Dream PDF here too, which we'll put into our Blissful Parenting Toolbox for you to explore and take a look at. And Donovan, this has been so great. It's I love hearing about your mission that you're on and all the wonderful work that you're doing. Is knowing that our parents are school-age kids and are going into the teen years, some of them very soon. Is there any words of advice you'd like to leave them with?
Yeah, so my youngest is 7th grade, and the two older ones, middle school was a little bit easier. The youngest one, it was harder. And again, you just got to talk. You got to communicate. And One kid was pretty brilliant. Like when you fake it and maybe you're not showing your real feelings, like this one kid, I asked a lot of people, like, what if people pretend to have green at all levels? He just was like, you just ask them how they're really doing. That's all you got to do, Mr. Dreyer. It's like, oh, why didn't I think of that? That's brilliant. And there's like a howareyourreally.org now. And I don't know if that's related or tied into the wall. Who knows how things go viral. But it was so cool that that kid had that breakthrough to just ask how you're really doing. So sometimes we're just kind of casual and the kids are, I don't know, I'm fine, or it was a good day. And they give us the one word answer. But the chart's pretty cool. If you just even draw a yellow and a red and a green and just say, how was it today? And how was it the next day? And they just point. Like boys are really good at just pointing, even in high school. I don't want to talk about it, Mr. Dreyer. So they'll just point. So that's a good way to kind of open that conversation a little bit more, because then you're like, oh, wow, okay. Are you being honest with me? Is this like where you're really at? Yeah, man, I trust you, Mom. We got a good connection. So yeah, this is where I'm really at. And okay, what's that mean? Well, what's going on with Susie then? So just find ways to open those conversations. And, you know, sometimes when you get the pushback and the, I don't know, you got to pick your spots. It's just not the right time. And when they get into middle school, that happens more frequently. But just be that buffer for them, be that safe support for them, be that listening ear for them. It's not so much like I could leave you with, here's 50 things to say. Use these babies right here more. Use the ears, and the Dare to Dream has good questions. So think about being more like Alex Trebek. If you've got wisdom, ask those questions that kind of lead them down the garden trail to where you want them to. Don't let them know what you're doing. Like things like tell me more and is much more helpful than coming in and getting judgy and, you know, oh, that's Sarah is so mean. Don't do it. Hold back. Just listen more and go and let them just open up to you and let it pour out.
Let's hear your theatrical sounds, parents.
Yeah, work on those theatrical sounds.
Awesome.
Do that while you're on your car or on your jog or whatever, you know, if you're listening on this podcast, wherever you are, work on your, I see. Tell me more.
Tell me more. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Donovan. This has been great. Blissful parents out there, go have a fabulous week, and we'll see you again here next week. Make sure you reach out to Donovan and go connect with him on social media and all the wonderful places that you can connect. Thanks again, Donovan, and have a great week, guys.